What happens when the world's most powerful nation goes head-to-head with Africa's most advanced economy? What if I told you that a single executive order could unravel decades of diplomatic relations and reshape the balance of power in the global south? Today, we are diving deep into a crisis that's been brewing for years, and the stakes, well, they are higher than you might think. Before we get into the explosive details of Trump's recent executive order against South Africa, I want you to consider this. When was the last time you saw a major power openly threaten to resettle citizens from another democratic country? Think about that for a moment, because it's about to get very, very important. To understand this matter, we need to go back to 1930. This wasn't any year in South Africa. It was the year that changed everything. In 1913, the white minority government passed the Native Lands Act. This single piece of legislation prevented 80% of South Africa's population from owning 87% of the country's land. Now, let that sink in for a moment. Imagine being told you couldn't own property in your own country simply because of your race. But here is where it gets more interesting. It wasn't just about land. It was about power, control, and a system that would later become known as apartheid. Fast forward to today, and here's what might shock you. Despite 30 years of democracy, 72% of private land is still owned by less than 10% of the population. And this is where our story begins. In December 2023, South Africa passed a new law that sends shockwaves through international politics. But before I tell you what Trump did in response, let me ask you this. What would you do if you were trying to correct centuries of inequality without destabilizing your entire economy? The answer might surprise you. And in a moment, I will show you why this could change the entire power balance in Africa. But first, let's break down what actually this new law does, because this is where most media outlets get it completely wrong. Despite what you might have heard, this isn't a Zimbabwe-style land grab. The law actually has three crucial safeguards. Number one, there isn't any arbitrary expropriations. Number two, there is fair compensation in most cases. And number three, legal processes must be followed. But here's the question nobody is asking. Why did Trump choose to do it at this particular moment? This is where things get fascinating and complicated. South Africa isn't any African nation. It's the only African nation in the G20, a key player in BRICS, and potentially America's biggest rival on the continent. Now, here is where the plot thickens. While Trump cited land reform as his reason for freezing aid, there are three bigger games being played behind the scenes: the BRICS challenge, the Israel factor, and China's connection. And if you think these are unrelated, wait until you see how they all connect. Let's start with something that might shock you. In 2022, South Africa exported $11 billion worth of goods to the United States. But here's the real question. While the US is freezing $440 million in aid, China has invested over $10 billion in South Africa just last year. You see where this is going? Before I reveal how this could completely change African geopolitics, let me ask you this. What do you think happens when a superpower pushes away its strongest African ally? Remember South Africa's bold move in the International Court of Justice? Their genocide case against Israel didn't just anger Trump's administration. It exposed a deeper divide in global politics. But here is what most analysts missed. In just a moment, I will show you how this connects to a bigger power play, one that could change everything. Now let's talk about one of the most fascinating players in this drama, Elon Musk. When the world's richest man born in South Africa starts questioning his home country's policies, well, people listen. But here's what most people don't realize about Musk's intervention. Musk's criticism about South Africa's land reform isn't just about property rights. It represents something much more bigger. According to a Washington Post article in 2019, a white South African group known as AfriForum have been lobbying for the US to take action against South Africa for years. AfriForum brought this to Trump in 2018, and unfortunately for them, Trump didn't win a second term, so the situation died down naturally. Just after Trump took power, they came back mounting pressure on Trump's administration, and now you understand one of the reasons why Elon Musk financed the Trump campaign. Elon Musk has been very collaborative with AfriForum, and so there is a direct correlation between the actions that we are seeing today by Trump and what is actually going on. But a lot of what AfriForum is saying is very inconsistent, and Trump is actually acting on information that is totally inconsistent. Now, one of the main things that AfriForum is putting forward for the South African government to be sanctioned is that black South Africans are targeting white South Africans in their farms, that are unaliving white South Africans in their farm. But then there is an interview that says otherwise from someone that you wouldn't expect. The white South African that lives in Oranje. Oranje is the place in South Africa where only whites are permitted to live there. Can you imagine that such a place still exists in this world in South Africa that had apartheid that everybody knows about? But then it is shocking that this individual made an interview where he openly said that white South Africans are not targeted in South Africa, that attacks are carried out irrespective of race, so it is not kind of race targeted. This actually means that Trump is sanctioning South Africa probably for no good reason. Trump is a transactional president. He acts spontaneously. The results are only going to be visible with time. South Africa in particular is a country that has taken a non-alliance stance. It is not taking sides with the US, it's not taking sides with China. And so this kind of an ally, I would call it an ally because it is an ally for the moment. After these kind of reactions on Trump, South Africa is going to reason twice. That's it. Let's move on. The growing divide between global tech elites and their home countries. But here is the twist. While Musk calls the laws racist, South African officials point to a crucial fact. Most of the expropriated land would be used for public infrastructure, schools, hospitals, housing, benefiting all South Africans regardless of race. Now, I'll play a clip for you. This is a white South African professor in South Africa. He has a different view, so not all white South Africans have the same view.
For that. But I think we must recognize that our constitution is very clear on this. There must be a redressing of past unjust practices that came out of colonialism and apartheid, that we must redress it using the constitution, and the Expropriation Act does exactly that. So we are hemmed within that framework by our constitution. And I just wanted to pick up on something, if I may, just to agree with Yvette, that at the heart of this is the inability of white people to recognize their privilege, to recognize their responsibility for past wrongs.
And this brings us to the most crucial part of our analysis. Let's break down the real cost of Trump's decision. And trust me, they are not what you think. So the economic cost, $440 million in frozen aid. Next, we have the AGOA benefits being at risk, We're talking about some 11 billion US dollars in trade. All this turmoil also caused potential investor uncertainty. But here's the real question that keeps diplomats at night. What if the US's actions push South Africa closer to Russia and China? Trump's action of taking away aid from South Africa also takes away America's soft power and actually is contrary to what Trump was preaching in his campaign, making America great. It's instead making America weaker. Now South Africa no longer cares whatever US has to offer, because the aid that the US is providing to South Africa represents only 17% of the total money that South Africa spends on HIV patients in South Africa. And several officials in South Africa has openly said that this doesn't cost a pinch. Unlike many other countries, South Africans are not begging to go to the USA. They don't want to go to the USA. So Trump might keep his border. Trump might block his border or whatever he wants to do with the US. South Africans don't really care. They don't really mind. So Trump is like shooting a bullet on his foot, because this could have been leverage on many geopolitical issues that the US would have held to make South Africa think on several things. But then the US is pulling that away. Trump is pulling that away. I mean, not say the US, because everybody knows who Trump is. He's a transactional leader. In 2019, when Trump carries out certain actions, there used to be a leader that takes the space of the US to pull many people back together. And that person was Angela Merkel. But currently, in our world of today, no one in the global stage seems to fit that category, since Trump is sanctioning nearly every ally. Trump has sanctioned Canada, Mexico, threatening to sanction Europe. He has put tariff on China. So the world as we see today is a very complicated place. We have no person like Angela Merkel was in 2018 that can pull people back together when Trump pours his medicine. Remember what happened when Trump pulled back from global leadership? Angela Merkel stepped in. But now there is no clear leader ready to fill America's shoes. And this is where things get really interesting. While Washington focuses on land reform issues, South Africa is quietly strengthening its position with BRICS. Think about it. South Africa is now at the intersection of three major power blocks: the Western alliances, the BRICS, and the Global South. But here is what everyone is missing. And now let's look at three possible scenarios that can unfold from here. And trust me, scenario 3, well, it will change the way you see global politics. Now, the first scenario, I call it the diplomatic dance. Here, South Africa maintains its non-alliance stance. US it eventually resumes, but at what cost to American influence? Scenario 2, the Eastern pivot. South Africa strengthens BRIC ties. China influence grows stronger, and the US loses strategic foothold in South Africa. But before I reveal scenario 3, ask yourself this question: what happens to the regional power when it feels pushed to a corner? Scenario 3, the game changer. South Africa becomes the catalyst for a new African alliance. BRICS gains more African members. The global balance of power shifts significantly. And this third outcome can actually be what we can see under Donald Trump due to his action, because his actions might just help take more African countries towards the east. And we have been seeing this already. Nigeria has joined the BRICS, Ethiopia, and many other countries are indicating. And with these actions that Trump is carrying on, it might just get a lot worse and faster. And what is the outcome? What is the result? The result is that America's influence on the continent is going to reduce. And once again, instead of making America great, it's going to make America weaker. Now, here is why this matters more than you think. We are not just watching a dispute over land reform. We are witnessing the potential restructuring of global alliances, a test case for national sovereignty versus international pressure, and possibly the beginning of a new world order. Think about it. When was the last time a developing nation stood against a superpower like the US with such confidence? So think about it. What's the real cost of strong strategic decision? It's not the aid money. It's about something much more valuable. Influence, control, power, soft power. The US might win this battle, but here's the bigger question. Are they losing the war of Africa's hearts? What do you think? Is South Africa making the right move to stand firm against the US? Or is this a dangerous gamble? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. If you found this analysis helpful, share it to 3 people that need to know about this. And also hit the like and subscribe button. If you haven't liked up to now, I don't know why. Also, join the Strategic Lens community so that we can have more discussions on topics like this.